Welcome back to another deep dive. Today, we're going to go behind the scenes of the Black Basta ransomware gang.
Yeah, it's not every day that we get access like this, but thanks to a massive leak of their internal chat logs, we can explore the inner workings of this notorious cybercrime group.
It's like we got front row seats to watch exactly how they operate.
We'll be drawing insights from three key sources for this deep dive. First, we have Black Basta ransomware gang implodes. Leaked chats reveal secrets and internal conflicts from risky business. Then, inside Black Basta, a deep dive into the ransomware group's tactics, techniques, and procedures by Ontinu. And finally, Vulncheck analyzes Black Basta chat logs from Vulncheck.
Yeah, before we go too deep into the digital weeds, though, a quick reminder that this deep dive is AI-powered and based purely on these sources. So, we're not security experts, just enthusiastic investigators.
Yeah, so please don't take this as professional security advice. Always consult with cybersecurity professionals for personalized guidance.
All right, disclaimer out of the way, let's get into it. Black Basta hit the scene in early 2022 and quickly gained a reputation for their high-profile attacks. But their origins are actually tied to another infamous ransomware group.
According to Risky Business, Black Basta was formed by ex-members of the Conti ransomware gang, which had disbanded following, you guessed it, their own leaked chat logs scandal.
Oh, wow. So Black Basta emerged from the ashes of Conti, carrying on the ransomware torch.
And just like Conti, their internal drama would ultimately be their undoing. But before we get to their dramatic implosion, let's talk about how Black Basta chose their victims.
Yeah, from what I've read, they weren't interested in just any target. They were after the big fish.
That's right. Ontinu's analysis shows that Black Basta focused on high-revenue companies, specifically in sectors like legal, financial, healthcare, and industrial.
Makes sense those sectors are much more likely to pay a hefty ransom to avoid any kind of disruption to their services.
Exactly. They used tools like Revenue Storm and Zoom Info to pinpoint wealthy targets, and the leaked chat logs reveal they even shared direct links to potential victims.
I read that they had file names like found use A revenue 6B to 25M.CSV. They weren't messing around.
No, they were organized and ruthlessly efficient. They knew exactly who they were going after.
So they had their sights set on high-value targets. But how did they actually get in? What vulnerabilities were they exploiting?
Well, here's something interesting. Black Basta preferred to exploit known vulnerabilities, relying on publicly available exploits rather than trying to find new ones.
Sounds efficient, if not a little lazy.
Well, from a cybercriminal's perspective, it makes sense. Why reinvent the wheel when you can just use readily available tools?
Yeah, that's true. But it also highlights a really crucial point for organizations out there. Timely patching is critical. Like, if Black Basta is using known exploits, staying up to date on patches could significantly reduce the risk.
Absolutely. This is a recurring theme in cybersecurity. Bad guys often rely on organizations failing to patch those known vulnerabilities.
So what specific vulnerabilities were they talking about in those leaked chats? Give us the juicy details.
Vulncheck's analysis identified 62 unique CVEs mentioned in the logs, and 53 of those had known exploits. Many targeted Microsoft products like Exchange Server and Windows Privilege escalation bugs.
Microsoft, always a popular target.
Unfortunately, yes. But they also discussed flaws in other widely used systems like Citrix NetScaler, Atlassian Confluence, and network edge devices from major vendors like Fortinet, Cisco, F5 Networks, and Palo Alto Networks.
So they were hitting big names across the board.
That's right. To give you a sense of the impact, let's look at a few specific CVEs. One that stood out was CVE 2024-3400. It was a zero-day vulnerability in Palo Alto Networks, PAN-OS, which was heavily exploited last spring.
That must have been a nightmare for organizations using that system.
It was. Then there's CVE 2023-4966, known as Citrix Bleed, another critical flaw in Citrix products.
Citrix seems to be a recurring theme
Yeah,
here.
and let's not forget CVE 2024-21762, a zero-day in Fortinet's Fortio software, which came under attack a year ago.
So a whole buffet of vulnerabilities, each with the potential for, significant damage. But here's what really struck me. They were discussing some CVEs before their official publication.
That is a very concerning detail, isn't it?
Yeah.
It suggests that there's a potential blind spot in how we track and disclose vulnerabilities. Defenders might be at a disadvantage if attackers know about flaws before they do.
This raises some pretty serious questions about how we can improve vulnerability management and ensure that defenders have the information they need to stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah, it's a critical area for improvement. We need to examine how we can close this knowledge gap and give defenders a fighting chance.
Okay, so we've covered their preferred targets and their focus on known vulnerabilities, so let's move on to their attack methods. How are they actually getting into these systems and deploying their ransomware?
Black Basta employed a variety of attack methods, from sophisticated phishing campaigns to brute force attacks and social engineering. They were adaptable and willing to use whatever worked best for a given target.
It sounds like they had a whole toolbox of cybercrime tricks.
They did. One notable tactic was their highly targeted phishing attacks, specifically aimed at Microsoft services like Office 365 and Azure.
Those are widely used platforms, so compromising those credentials would give them access to a lot of valuable data.
Precisely. And the leaked chats reveal some of their techniques. They discussed setting up reverse proxies, intercepting cookies, and using dropped domains, all to avoid detection and make their attacks more effective.
So they were combining technical expertise with, really cunning tactics.
Exactly. And those phishing attacks were just one part of their arsenal. They also used brute force attacks to gain remote access through compromised credentials for things like VPNs, firewalls, and RDP.
So they were systematically targeting common entry points into corporate networks.
That's right. They went after products like Citrix, Checkpoint, SonicWall, Pulse Secure, and Screen Connect, basically any system that relied on remote access.
So if they had a login they were trying to break in.
They were relentless. They even discussed cracking password hashes and paying for hash cracking services. Ontinue's analysis actually uncovered a list of over 1,000 file names that appear to be related to brute-forced passwords.
It really highlights the importance of strong passwords and multi-factor authentication, right?
Absolutely. Stolen or weak credentials can be a major weak point for any organization.
And then, of course, there's good old-fashioned social engineering, where they impersonated IT departments to trick employees into giving up sensitive information.
That classic tactic is still surprisingly effective. People are often too trusting, especially when they think they're dealing with a legitimate authority figure.
Yeah, it's a reminder that security awareness training is crucial for all employees, no matter their role.
That's a key takeaway from all of this. Technology is important, but so is human behavior. We need to educate people about the risks and empower them to make smarter security decisions.
Well said. So we've seen how they chose their targets, the vulnerabilities they exploited, and the tactics they used to gain access. Now, I'm curious about the tools and techniques they used to carry out their attacks.
That's where things get even more interesting. Black Basta had a sophisticated toolkit, combining custom malware with off-the-shelf hacking tools.
So they were both innovative and resourceful.
Exactly. According to Ontinue, one of their go-to tools was Cobalt Strike, a popular framework for command and control.
Ah, Cobalt Strike. It's become almost synonymous with advanced cyber attacks.
Yeah, it's a powerful tool that allows attackers to remotely control compromised systems. Black Basta also used a mix of custom malware, including JavaScript-based, DLL-based, and even some variants of Qbot, a notorious banking Trojan.
They were mixing and matching their malware cocktails to create some pretty potent attacks.
And of course, they used a variety of malicious scripts, including VBS and MSI files, to automate tasks and evade detection.
Sounds like they were constantly evolving their techniques to stay ahead of security defenses.
They also leveraged tools like Shodan and FOFA, which are essentially search engines for internet-connected devices, to find vulnerable systems.
So they were proactively scanning the internet for easy targets.
They were, and once they identified a target, they used tools like ZoomInfo to gather intelligence about the organization and its employees.
They were doing their homework, carefully selecting their victims and planning their attacks.
They were meticulous in their approach. And to further cover their tracks, they used SOCKS proxies for anonymization, making it harder to trace their activities back to them.
SOCKS proxies. Can you explain that a little more?
Sure. Imagine you're sending a letter, but you don't want the recipient to know your return address. You could use a proxy to forward the letter for you so it looks like it came from a different location.
That's a great analogy. So in this case, the SOCKS proxy acts as an intermediary, hiding the true origin of their traffic.
Exactly. And to spread their malicious files and exfiltrate stolen data, they used popular file sharing services like send.vc.ee, transfer.esh, and temp.esh.
So they were exploiting legitimate services for their own nefarious purposes.
That's a common tactic in cybercrime. They often hijack trusted platforms and tools to blend in and avoid detection.
So they had their targets, their vulnerabilities, their attack methods, their tools, and they even knew how to cover their tracks. It sounds like they were unstoppable. But if that's the case, how did they end up imploding? What brought down this seemingly invincible cybercrime empire?
That's what we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive. It turns out that even the most sophisticated criminal organizations are vulnerable to human error, internal strife, and perhaps a little bit of karma.
Stay tuned, folks. We'll be back in a flash to uncover the dramatic downfall of Black Basta. Welcome back. We just dove deep into Black Basta's sophisticated tactics and arsenal of tools, but as you'll see, they weren't as invincible as they appeared.
That's right. Despite their meticulous planning and technical prowess, Black Basta ultimately fell victim to the same forces that plague many criminal organizations: internal conflict and leaks.
It's fascinating how, even in the shadowy world of cybercrime, human drama plays such a significant role.
Yeah, it's a reminder that behind the malware and exploits are real people with their own motivations and rivalries and vulnerabilities.
So set the stage for us. How did things start to unravel for Black Basta?
According to Risky Business, it all began to crumble in early 2025. One disgruntled member, disillusioned with the group's direction, decided to leak their internal matrix chat logs on the dark web.
Leaked chat logs again. It seems like history repeating itself, considering how Conti met their demise.
It does make you wonder about the security practices or lack thereof within these cybercriminal groups.
Perhaps they should ditch the digital chats and go back to carrier pigeons.
Maybe so. But in all seriousness, this leak proved catastrophic for Black Basta. It exposed their secrets, their tactics, and perhaps most damaging of all, their internal squabbles.
So what was the motivation behind the leak? Was it just a disgruntled employee airing dirty laundry, or is there something more to it?
Risky Business suggests the leaker's primary motive was a disagreement over targeting Russian banks. It seems there were ethical lines even within this criminal organization, with the leaker fearing repercussions from Russian authorities.
Makes sense. Don't bite the hand that feeds you, as they say.
But here's the thing, the leak may have been the final blow, but according to Prodaft, Black Basta was already teetering on the brink of collapse.
So the leak just accelerated their downfall.
That's the picture that Prodaft paints. They suggest that by early 2025, Black Basta had effectively ceased most of its operations, with many members already jumping ship to join other ransomware gangs, such as Cactus.
So the group was already fracturing from within, and the leak simply exposed those cracks to the world.
Precisely. And those leaked chats provide a fascinating glimpse into the inner workings of this group. We see power struggles, mistrust, financial disputes, and even anxieties about getting caught.
Give us some examples. What kind of drama was unfolding in those chat logs?
Well, there was Lapa, one of the key administrators. He was constantly stressed, complaining about being underpaid, and often butting heads with Oleg, the boss.
Sounds like a classic case of burnout and a toxic work environment.
Then there's Cortes, who is believed to be linked to the Cacbot group. He distanced himself from the attacks on Russian banks, highlighting the complex web of alliances and rivalries within the cybercrime ecosystem.
Yeah, it's a reminder that it's not a monolithic entity. There are different players with their own agendas and sometimes conflicting interests.
And then you have Y, another administrator who seemed content with his role, focused on support tasks and receiving a decent salary. This suggests there were different levels of involvement and commitment within the group.
Interesting. So it wasn't just a flat hierarchy. There were different roles, responsibilities, and even levels of satisfaction among the members.
Exactly. But the real drama seemed to revolve around Oleg, the boss. He was frequently clashing with other members over fees and operational decisions, creating friction and resentment within the group.
Sounds like a classic power struggle. The kind you see in any organization, legal or not.
And adding to the tension, there's Bio, another member who expressed concern about getting arrested after another member was apprehended. This fear of getting caught was clearly weighing on them.
Yeah, it humanizes them in a way. Even though they're engaged in criminal activities, they're still subject to the same anxieties and fears as anyone else.
It's a reminder that these cybercriminals aren't some faceless boogeymen lurking in the shadows. They're real people with their own vulnerabilities and internal conflicts.
So Black Basta's downfall wasn't just about technical vulnerabilities, it was about human vulnerabilities as well.
Exactly. It's a story about greed, ambition, betrayal, and ultimately self-destruction. The very forces that drove their success also contributed to their demise.
It's a fascinating case study in the complexities of the cybercrime world, where technical expertise is only part of the equation. Human behavior, with all its unpredictability, plays a crucial role.
And as we've seen, those human elements can be just as exploitable as any software vulnerability.
What can our listeners who are trying to navigate this increasingly complex threat landscape learn from Black Basta's downfall?
I think there are several key takeaways here. First, it reinforces the importance of strong security fundamentals.
The things we hear all the time, but they bear repeating. Patching known vulnerabilities, implementing multi-factor authentication, being wary of phishing emails, and fostering a culture of security awareness within organizations.
Absolutely. These basic practices can go a long way in mitigating the risk of attacks, even from sophisticated groups like Black Basta.
What else stands out to you?
I think Black Basta's story also underscores the value of threat intelligence.
Understanding how these groups operate, their tactics, tools, and even their internal dynamics can help organizations anticipate and defend against their attacks.
Exactly. By studying groups like Black Basta, we can learn their patterns, identify potential weaknesses, and develop more effective defenses.
It's like studying your opponent's playbook in a sporting match.
That's a great analogy. And finally, I think Black Basta's implosion highlights the importance of addressing not just the technical aspects of cybersecurity, but also the human element.
That means investing in security awareness, training for employees, fostering a culture of open communication about security risks, and addressing potential vulnerabilities within the organization itself.
It's about recognizing that security is not just about technology, it's about people.
So Black Basta's story is a cautionary tale, but it's also a reminder that even the most formidable cybercriminal groups are not invincible.
They can be brought down by their own mistakes, their internal conflicts, and the actions of individuals who choose to do the right thing.
It's a reminder that there's always hope, and that by working together, we can make the digital world a safer place.
Well said. I think that's a great note to end on.
So we've uncovered Black Basta's sophisticated tactics, their carefully chosen targets, and even their internal conflicts that ultimately led to their downfall.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating journey, hasn't it?
It really has. But as we wrap up this deep dive, I keep coming back to one question. What does the story of Black Basta tell us with the bigger picture of cybercrime?
That's a great question, and I think there are several key takeaways. First, it highlights just how complex and interconnected the cybercrime ecosystem really is.
We saw how Black Basta emerged from the remnants of Conti, and how some of their members later migrated to other groups like Cactus. It's a constantly shifting landscape.
It is, and that makes it incredibly difficult to track these groups and anticipate their next move.
It's like trying to map a constantly changing constellation.
Precisely. And the stakes are incredibly high. These ransomware attacks can cripple businesses, disrupt critical infrastructure, and cost victims billions of dollars.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed, like we're constantly playing catch-up with these cybercriminals.
Yeah, I understand that feeling. It's a challenging landscape, but I also think there's a sense of hope to be found in Black Basta's story.
Hope? Really?
Yes, because their downfall demonstrates that even the most sophisticated and successful cybercriminal groups are not invincible.
They made mistakes, they let their internal conflicts get the better of them, and ultimately they were brought down by a combination of those factors.
Exactly. It shows that we as defenders have opportunities to disrupt these groups, to exploit their weaknesses, and to make the digital world a little bit safer.
So it's not a hopeless battle.
Not at all. There's a lot we can do to protect ourselves and our organizations.
So as we wrap up our exploration of Black Basta, what's the one big takeaway you want our listeners to remember?
I think the key message is this: stay curious, stay informed, and stay proactive.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the cyber threat landscape is constantly evolving, so we need to be constantly learning and adapting. Stay curious about how these attacks work, stay informed about the latest threats and vulnerabilities, and stay proactive in taking steps to protect yourself and your organization.
It's not enough to just react to attacks after they happen. We need to be anticipating threats and taking steps to mitigate them before they become a problem.
That's exactly right. And that's what the deep dive is all about, helping you understand the complexities of the cyber world, one fascinating story at a time.
We want to empower you with the knowledge and insights you need to stay safe in this digital age.
So to all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Black Basta.
We hope you found it insightful, thought-provoking, and maybe even a little bit entertaining.
And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more fascinating deep dives into the ever-evolving world of cybersecurity.
Who knows what we'll unpack next? Maybe we'll explore the rise of AI-powered malware or the latest tactics used by nation-state hackers.
The possibilities are endless, and we're excited to share them with you.
So stay tuned, stay curious, and stay safe out there in the digital world. Until next time.